Hello everyone, how are you? My name is Ivan, and today I will present a topic which is post 1970 English curriculum in Malaysia with my partner Khor Jing. We are doing this presentation to fulfill the requirements for one of our courses, which is a course taught by Dr. MOHAMAD JAFRE. We are students of the Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages course, and we are also students of the School of Educational Studies from the University of Sciences Malaysia, USM. Today, our presentation will come with various objectives. Firstly, we hope that you will be able to distinguish these English curricula, which were implemented in 3 eras after the year 1970. Perhaps you can have a look at these eras. The first era comprises of the English syllabus for use in Standard 1 to Standard 6 of the post-1970 national primary schools, and the English syllabus for Form 1 to Form 3 of the secondary schools in Malaysia. We will also look at the second era, which lasted from the 1980s until the year 2010. They were the new primary schools curriculum, the integrated primary schools curriculum, and the integrated secondary schools curriculum. My partner Yao will talk about the 2010s. They were the primary school standard-based curriculum, secondary school standard-based curriculum, and standard-based English language curriculum. What actually happened after 1970? According to Fu and Richards, the May 1969 incident led to a gradual disappearance of English schools. I will talk about this incident briefly. It stemmed from racial tensions and made the government realize that our country needs to have a more unified education system. In the past, there were various schools that use various languages as medium of instructions. For example, the English schools use English as their lingua franca of instruction. The Chinese schools opted for Mandarin or any Chinese dialect. The Malay schools use Malay. Hence, the government decided that perhaps it was time to force the schools to use a single language for medium of instruction. That was when the English schools became national schools gradually. In line with that development, the government also introduced new syllabi. These syllabi were the English syllabus for use in Standard 1 to Standard 6 of the post-1970 national primary schools, which were designed for primary school students, obviously. Then we also witnessed the birth of the English syllabus for Form 1 to Form 3 of the secondary schools in Malaysia that was introduced in 1973. That syllabus was meant for those who were in their lower secondary stage. As they progressed to the upper secondary stage, another syllabus was introduced. It was called the English language syllabus in Malaysian schools, tingkatan 4 until tingkatan 5. That was first implemented in 1980. Tingkatan 4 means Form 4. Tingkatan 5 means Form 5. Therefore, we can summarize that this syllabus is meant for those who were in their upper secondary academic stage. We move on to the next slide. There were three phases of English until 1983. The structural situational syllabus was designed and introduced to primary school students. The structural situational approach was introduced to lower secondary school students. The last syllabus introduced was the communicative syllabus, or known as the task-oriented situational approach, which was meant for the upper secondary school students. The first two phases were meant for making sure the students to cope with the academic needs in the future. It meant that they had to achieve those milestones before they can reach the next milestone. The communicative syllabus was designed to ensure that the students could become better workers. As we all know, Malaysia before the millennium was a very export-oriented nation. We relied on laborers to produce goods, and they had to understand the orders given by the superiors. Hence, understanding orders and content became the main focus of the education system back then. What actually happened in 1979? A task force decided to send a report to Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, our former Prime Minister, who was the then Minister of Education. The report suggested that there were no emphasis on reading, writing, and arithmetic skills. The task force also pressed for a need for a national curriculum. It also highlighted that foreign elements that were introduced back then were deemed too difficult for the students to understand. The students did not know the context of those elements, hence they lose interest in study. They weren't job ready. Hence, the task force suggested that the curriculum should be more to preparing them for their future. This task force also said that there should be more emphasis on oral activities, which meant that they had to learn how to speak English better. More activities should be introduced for them to speak English better. The task force also highlighted the importance on English proficiency for acquisition on science and technology knowledge. There were two curriculum that were introduced after 1979, and they were the major English curriculum to be adopted by the government until the 2010s. We will look at the new primary school curriculum, which was known as KBSR in Malay. We will also get to know the integrated secondary schools curriculum, which was the KBSM. The new primary schools curriculum was mainly focused on the acquisition of reading, writing, and arithmetic skills among primary school children. The national primary school was using the Malay language as the medium of instruction for most subjects except English. The national type Chinese or Tamil schools used Chinese or Tamil as the lingua franca. It was a great start, but it wasn't that good because it lacked usage of information and communication technology. The students weren't exposed to computers, projectors, cameras, and whatever newfangled technology that was introduced to them at that time. The students also lacked training in terms of learner autonomy. They couldn't develop their learner autonomy skills in order to be self-reliant when learning. They also lack study skills and thinking skills. They couldn't think critically. They couldn't think logically. They even lack motivation to study. The teachers had to force them to study. To us, it seemed bizarre, but that was But that situation actually happened back then. The government also saw the phenomena and decided to put a stop on it by introducing the integrated primary schools curriculum in 1990. We move on to the next slide. The integrated secondary schools curriculum, on the other hand, emphasized on the inclusion of moral spiritual values. The curriculum was designed for the students to be good citizens. The curriculum was designed for them to behave properly when they get out from school. The teachers were supposed to pose higher order thinking skills questions to them, but I strongly feel that wasn't the case back then. The learners also had to participate actively, but I doubt that. The curriculum also advocated communicative language teaching, which meant the teachers had to do a lot of drilling in terms of speaking activities. The teachers had to drill them to speak oral English better. From the 1990s to the 2010s, we witnessed a lot of changes in the national education system. Firstly, the curriculum adopted the integration of computer skills on a larger scale. Computers, printers, and other equipment were being introduced to students for the first time. There was a policy for English for science and technology. Let me brief you on that. Apparently, there's a subject in secondary schools that was called English for science and technology. The curriculum for that subject mainly focused on the technical jargons that one has to learn when they start working in the science and technology industry. I remembered some of my former secondary school friends took it as a subject for the CJO Pelajar in Malaysia examination. There was also the controversial English for teaching science and mathematics policy. I will talk about that later. Smart schools sprouted everywhere. Smart schools refer to schools that adopted the usage of information and communication technology widely. A literature program was introduced to students in order to cultivate their ability to admire literary text. I'm sorry, it should be literary text. I apologize for the correction. I mean error. I'm sorry. The literature component was later incorporated into two major national examinations, which were the CJO Pelajar Malaysia examination, which was for the Form 5 students, and the CJO Rendar Pelajaran, which was for the Form 3 students. CJO Pelajar, the SRP will later be replaced by PMR, which was Penilaian Menengah Rendah. A few years back, the same examination was replaced by the widely known school-based assessment. My partner Yao will talk about that later. We also witnessed the introduction of content-based instruction and aesthetic approach. Content-based instruction literally meant the teacher taught students based on the textbook. The teacher would teach the students grammar items and other stuff based on the textbook. It also meant that the students only gain a little bit of knowledge because their knowledge was limited to the textbook. The aesthetic approach was designed to ensure the students would able to write better compositions, appreciate art, and so on, and also be good citizens. We move on to the next slide. The controversial English for teaching science and mathematics policy was first implemented in 2003, but was later abolished in 2002. It was meant to introduce science and mathematics in its lingua franca to students, which meant the students weren't learning English while science and mathematics. They had to understand scientific and mathematical knowledge in its original medium of instruction, which is English. As we all know, English is widely used in the field of science, mathematics, and technology. Hence, the government at that time felt that it was necessary for students to understand certain technical jargons in English. Hence, the entire curriculum was in English in its entirety. I apologize for that again. However, English language teachers felt the burden because they had to raise the proficiency of English among students in their classrooms. Because if the students fail to grasp English, they also fail to grasp mathematics and science at the same time. In fact, some of the teachers who taught English back then had to become the buddies of the science and mathematics teachers because these teachers weren't good in English. Peer support was established. That was good. But what about the students? As a result of this policy, the students suffered declining performances in science and mathematics nationally. It was proven by PISA, the international assessment, and our nation failed badly in 2011 or 2012. I believe it's around that time. It was a widely debated issue, and the government decided to pull the plug on the policy because it was ineffective towards those who come from the rural areas. Now I will leave and I will let Yao do the rest. Thank you, everyone. Sorry if I pronounce some words incorrectly. I hope you understand. I also want to apologize for wearing my pajamas at this time because I was recording in the night. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, Ivan. Thanks, Ivan. From 2010 onwards, we have Malaysian Education Blueprint, MBM-MBI, Upholding Malay, Strengthening English, and English Language Education Roadmap for Malaysia 2015 until 2025. And lastly, we have School-Based Assessments. Malaysian Education Blueprint was introduced in 2013, and I was 14 years old back then. I can still recall vividly that 2013 was a year of turmoil and fortune. Why would I say that? Because teachers back then were like, what is MEB? Why do they even introduce to us MEB? And hot is bad, just bad. I don't know what they are thinking when they are introducing HOTS, when I don't even have HOTS in my mind. And then they turn to us asking, what do you think of MAB? And I don't think of MAB. I don't think of it because I believe that I can get a good time and got 8 A's in PMR I spent, and chill through my lower secondary life. And little did I know, my life after that just getting worse and worse. We're not always getting the life we want. MEB came to my face and started introducing to me band 1 until band 6. KH was removed. I was very happy, but geography and history subject had new plans. They asked us to go to the river to ask the river whether it knows how polluted it is, interviewing people on the street, whether they know that Sri Ramban residents will be the first to die because of the drainage system if tsunami came. That's not the worst part. In 3 months, PT3 came banging into my face and said, "You think you're gonna run away from PMR? From me? No way. Guess what? Here I am, reborn again, with new plastic surgery and transformation." In the end, I got 8 A's though. Just like what it was meant to be in PMR. And 2 B's. BM Lisan B, and because I'm not Malaysian, and Mandarin B because I'm not born, ABC. Coming back to the slide, Malaysian Education Blueprint marks the introduction of the revamped KSSR and KSSM primary and secondary school standards-based curriculum. It is a platform for higher order thinking skills, HORS, to be developed among students. Linus and Linus LBI 2.0 literacy and numeracy screening for English language were introduced in 2010 and 2012, respectively. In 2013, standards-based English language curriculum was introduced. It gives emphasis to 6 skills, namely basic reading literacy, phonics, writing skills, language arts, HOTS, and reasoning skills. Standard British English is used for pronunciation, grammar, and spelling. It is urged that schools should have 6 hours of English classes per week. Now, let's take a closer look at what standards-based English language curriculum is. Let me take Year 6 curriculum for an example. By the end of Year 6, pupils should be able to communicate with people confidently and appropriately in any given situation. Read and understand English text for knowledge and pleasure. Write text appropriately. Appreciate and understand literature or creative works for pleasure. Use grammar correctly and appropriately during conversations and writing. Now, as we can see, basic reading literacy is emphasized again in Objective 2, and writing skills in Objective 3. In Objective 4, language arts can be seen. Reasoning skills, well, you can see in grammar usage, as correct grammar usage requires great reasoning skills. and logical thinking. And lastly, communicate with people confidently is like using hot skills so that they can discuss things further. MBM MBI urges students to master both Malay and English fluently. It reinforced the position of Malay as a medium of communication in all schools. It is believed to narrow the gap in the achievement of science and math subjects between rural and urban areas. Under MBM MBI, Malay is the main language, and at the same time, English is given special emphasis. There are extra contact hours for Malay and English. English language education roadmap for Malaysia is aligned with the Malaysian education blueprint. It is a guide for teachers and curriculum developers to ensure students are proficient in English based on international standards. It enables students to participate in formal and academic discussions even when they enter universities or being pre-service teachers. It is benchmarked against the Common European Framework of Reference, CFR. Since then, it streamlines Malaysia's level. Let me move a bit so that you can see. Okay, perfect. Okay. It streamlines Malaysia's level of education to international standards. Okay. School-based assessment, my nightmare. It causes significant change to the present assessment system. It is a continuous or progressive system, assessment system, as the achievements of students are measured by performance standards. It is relatively difficult marking system as it poses unrealistic views on the expected English vocabulary gained by secondary school students and their ability to speak English properly, or to speak, or maybe to the extent where they can speak perfect English. The marking system is difficult because of the rubric and the grading system. It has good motives, undeniably, but it was poorly implemented because it never gave a chance to teachers and school authorities to prepare themselves mentally for this sudden change. And it demands for extra materials and documents as let me put it this way. If PMR, the schools need not to prepare a room for school-based assessment documents. However, with the commencement of school-based assessment, an extra room like a library should be prepared just to keep all those documents until the students graduate from secondary school. And the internet access problems hamper the implementation of online recording and storing system. I can still recall vividly that my mother used to wait half an hour just to get one web page to refresh. How ridiculous it is. Nevertheless, the changes are leading us to somewhere, unbeknownst to us. But changes are always good, as only with changes, opportunity comes along. So I cannot assure you that changes will only bring something good, but growth might happen. Yeah, this is our reference, and that's all from me. Thanks.